Hi, welcome to the New Schools. Catherine Fraise is one of our most often recommended guests, and for good reason. A mother of two, she has 3 Montessori certifications. She was a teacher in traditional schools, then became a homeschooler, and she works with teens and teams of adults as the founder of multiple successful educational spaces, both physical and virtual. Her latest is an online educational platform for teens called WorkspaceSKY.org, and it opens September 7th. Cath has dedicated her life to getting learners of all ages engaged. This conversation is about self-agency, competence, and confidence in education. Learn about lily pads, destination imagination, and what Montessori has to do with high schoolers. How can we nurture communities, share spaces, and schooling with our neighbors? What works in online education, and what's better left to your own backyard? And now, your friend and mine, Shannon Falkenstein, founder of Acton Academy El Salvador, speaking with Cath Fraise.
So yeah, just so let's just kick it off. Just give me give me your life story kind of in brief, and then go, and then I want to hear about 100 Roads and Workspace Education, which was so cool, and then what you're doing now and why you changed location so drastically.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to cover. But basically, I was one of those teenagers. I had a little ADHD. And I was very socially motivated, and I was in a public school, and the teachers just weren't really into it, right? And we did so much busy work, and I sort of realized that it was a bit of a game, and got a bit disenchanted with school. And I thought, well, it needs to be better, because I feel like I have a lot of potential, but I'm going through the motions here, and it wasn't being drawn out of me, if you know what I mean. And I thought, I remember this moment when I was 12, and I'm like, okay, I'm an adult. I'm a person with agency. I remember feeling that. And I'm looking at all these adults around me in the school, and they're just going through the motions, teaching the same old stuff. And it was just very busy, a lot of busy work. So long story short, I went into education because I wanted to reform it and change it. But, after becoming a teacher, I didn't feel like, I feel like I was in a system and so stuck in that system, so that I wouldn't be able to change it from the inside. So then I went into the whole alternative school orientation. And I had a professor at university also who was really into Krishnamurti. And he was all about conditioning and really sort of that the inside of you and how you're thinking, how your mind is thinking. And I thought, okay, I need to do a deep dive into all the different kinds of educational models, because in teachers college, you're not taught all of these different models. So then I went into Waldorf and into Montessori, and ended up doing 3 Montessori certifications. And then I had my children in Montessori school, and they weren't thriving, or at their, really, it wasn't unlocking their potential. They were getting really good work habits, and they were becoming more independent. They were self-choosing and all those sort of things. But I felt like there was something missing. So I pulled them out of Montessori school, and I started doing project-based homeschooling. And I started doing all these different experiments in education. And I saw that they really grew when they were out in the world, when they were challenged to find something that they really loved, they really cared about, and they needed to share it with other people. So they had to go and find a way to apply that thing that they really loved out into the community. And for my son, that was Minecraft. And he set up this whole server in the local library, and then joined all these libraries, and he had this giant Minecraft club. He's now 18, so that was a while ago when he was 9. And my daughter, she really loved dogs, and she started an animal rescue. And she ended up importing dogs from Georgia, and spending, a day a week at a vet's office. And she had a whole network of foster families. And it was just this amazing, I mean, her agency just like skyrocketed, and her confidence in being able to do something really skyrocketed. So, the other thing I discovered in that journey is like kids, they can do a big deep dive into something, and then overnight they can change direction and then want to do something completely different, right? But the tools that they get on each of these zigzags are it's like their little toolkit for learning. They can use it no matter what they're doing with, whatever passion they are following at the time. So
it's like a meta skill, and then they can take that skill to anything they were curious about. Would you say?
Yeah, and they're building competence in learning, right? But also confidence that they can learn anything. And I found that she just kept on getting confidence, and she decided, okay, I'm going to write a novel. So she published her first book when she was 15. She wanted to be on Broadway, and she spent one day a week in Manhattan, Broadway Artist Alliance. And then she wanted to go and make a difference and teach improv to kids in the tri-state area in Manhattan. She went to Madagascar and put Wi-Fi in this like improv center in Madagascar. Just like she did really, really awesome things in her teen years. And she just has this, this belief that she can do anything that she can put her mind to. And I felt like that was what was missing. I noticed that in homeschooling, when I tried to make her do something in particular, like, you really need to write a 5-paragraph essay, right? Like her energy would drain from her, and it would be like pushing a giant boulder uphill. And anytime I let her really work out what she was going to do or deep dive into something, her energy seemed to be limitless. In fact, it seemed to give her energy. And I kind of realized that we have finite energy as humans. So what we should be really looking for is engagement. And if they're always engaged doing stuff that they really care about, what they like to do, they are going to learn much more than, if they stay on my on the track that I designed for them. Yeah. And also, I also found that because she wanted to keep up with her peers, she wanted to do APs and she wanted to do all these things. So she ended up doing 8 APs in her last year of high school in a college. Yeah, and so I just felt like
she did like in a community college or something, or she enrolled in a state college while she was finishing high school and did her APs there.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
No, she did that. She started preparing for APs at about 13. And so by the time she'd finished her high school year, she'd done about 8 of them. And in her last year of college, she's like, well, I really should do calculus. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe she can transition into, like, it'll be a good experience for her. Like, she's now driving, so she can drive to the local university and do these classes. And she had done, she'd done testing. She'd done her ACT, and she got really, pretty good scores. So they just said she could do any class she wanted, like 3rd year. She wanted to do writing for the judicial system, and like things which I would never have found interesting, I have to say, but that's what she wanted to do. And she got into college, and she's now about to publish her 3rd book. And she's living in Boston and hanging out with an engineer, and
wow.
Happy. Yeah, really happy. She was president of the debate club, or I guess they call it a club, at Tufts University. So I mean, she's holding her own.
Definitely. Wow.
So I just felt like school would have held her back a little bit. That's all. It wasn't something that was going to make her education better.
And were you also working in a job on the side of engaging your children in project-based homeschooling, or were you 100% dedicated to that with them?
Yeah, I was one of those mums that was kind of like a community organizer. Mm-hmm. So I was doing Destination Imagination. So I'd have groups of kids that came to, like on Sundays, for example, every Sunday we'd have like 15 families that would come, and we'd have this giant potluck dinner. And we had 6 different destination imagination teams in my house, all creating and making, and my house was a complete disaster. And then we'd have this big break in the middle where we'd, put the fire pit on, and the kids would be jumping on the trampoline or playing, different games in the backyard. And as parents, we'd all talk, and we just really, the parent community really became, we just became really tight, and we just really liked each other, and our kids were growing up next to each other, and all the siblings were interacting together, sort of more like cousins, I guess, than, it was just, we were just very close. So I was thinking maybe I can broaden that community feeling that we had and make a giant makerspace, because I couldn't fit any more destination imagination teams in my house to start with. And wouldn't it be amazing if everybody got an opportunity to do this? And as parents, we became pretty competent at creating learning experiences that our children loved. And I thought if we could put all of our resources in the middle and all help each other, and then the kids would have enough time to play and all these different things, then, our homeschooling life would be wonderful. So that's really was my impetus for making Workspace Education. So that was, I don't know how much you know about it, but it was a 32,000 square foot giant makerspace, sort of a giant red barn with an industrial piece on the back of it. We had an industrial kitchen in the middle and a big hub, and then we had science labs and performing arts, like a performing arts center, and cardboard manufacturing, all these different ways that humans express themselves. And it was really just set up so we could do any project. We could, we could make up any class we wanted. We could get any educator to come in and do anything. And we'd just use that space as like almost like, instead of a tennis club, it's an education club for the families who are members.
That is so cool. And so you funded it through a membership model, or did you get grants, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so it's weird. I self-funded it, right? But the building wasn't very expensive. It'd been sitting there for 2 years, and it was like 95% perfect to move into. It was the cheapest real estate I could find at $56 per square foot. And if for anyone who's been building recently, you'd know that that is extremely inexpensive real estate. So I was thinking, wow, so many of the sites that I thought would be good for this kind of thing, like, we wanted to go into an old sawmill at the beginning because it was such a cool building, and I thought it'd be, be really interesting to meet there. But, there's brown soil usually associated with an industrial building, or there's no, really poor infrastructure. So you're spending millions of dollars before you get in. But this building was owned by Cannondale Bicycles, and they had set it up with 150 cubicles. So we had fiber optic cable, and we had an alarm system. We had all these systems already in place, so that it was pretty much just, we moved in 5 months, and we opened in 5 months from buying the building. And the building, considering the size, and it was on 5 acres and on a lake and next to this beautiful pristine forest, surrounded by makers, because we were in a business park. It was just, I looked at it and I thought, if I can do it here, I could do it anywhere, right? I mean, this is the perfect location for what I wanted to do. I could see it walking through. I could see the kids doing everything in all the different spaces. And I'm just like, if I'm going to take the idea to the next level, I can get this building and I can go bold. And I thought, I'm just going to do it.
That's amazing. That sounds so ideal. It sounds just incredible. And so adults in the family could work there, like people who were maybe freelancers or people who were geographically, what do they call that? Geographically independent. And so they could work there, and then their children would be doing projects and self-directing and choosing what they wanted to work on.
Yes. It was like, the top creative companies in the country, that's how they set them up, like, so that you're walking through a place and you bump into someone and you start a conversation and, oh, wouldn't it be great if, and I want to create that environment in a space. And before COVID, we had 140 classes and courses on our schedule, so we had a lot of stuff going on that people were putting together. And then if they didn't want to put it together, they'd find an educator and then ask the community if they wanted to jump in. And then you can sort of go around and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a class on this. Do you think your kids might be interested? And then if you had enough kids, you could easily sort of organize that class for the next session. And that's kind of just, it happened very, very organically. And I think when you're trying to make something that's I would call it a complex adaptive system, like a living system, you can't really steer it so much. You just sort of like, you're observing and you're tweaking, it has to self-manage itself.
Yeah.
And we just had to make the conditions ripe for creativity and for this kind of collaboration. And it sort of took on a life of its own. And everyone was
still going?
It's still going, except that, so when COVID hit, I was approached by two nonprofits who are actually providing educational services to 2 counties in Connecticut. They were really interested in getting the building. They were very interested in accommodating the community members who wanted to be in the building. We had about half the community that wanted to be in the building, another half of them didn't want to be exposed to COVID. So it was quite, as far as keeping everything going financially, it was a little challenging, knowing how to navigate this time. Also, we had quite a few people who didn't want to wear masks, and there was just quite a lot of unrest. Now, of course, in hindsight, everyone's probably okay with a mask, but at the time, I just thought, well, this is an opportunity for the community to now take over, rather than, I launched it, I showed people the way. We've got these 2 nonprofits who are going to buy the building, so that's the biggest burden for families, and then they are on the board and are allowed to operate in the building. So it's still going, just not under my leadership.
And then you made a drastic move from Connecticut out to Montana. Tell us more about that.
Well, so my husband sold his business, and he's always wanted to. He grew up in Madagascar, and he grew up, on land, and he really wanted to get back to the land. So when he sold his business, we suddenly found ourselves able to be in the position to acquire some land, and he found this really beautiful track. He loves fishing, so he's got a little bit of this fly fishing river, and we want to do regenerative agriculture, or he wants to do regenerative agriculture. So it just really seemed like, okay, if I can recreate Workspace in a virtual format, so we have the same dynamics, the same walking through and you're bumping into people, and I can basically design a space with all those things that I would have loved to have had in the physical space at Workspace, but I couldn't build on another room or whatever. I would be able to design this in a virtual world and have it so that people across the country, no matter where they were, could join, and I could offer services to families at 1/10 of the cost because I don't have the building, and I can probably do 10 times the value because now I've got, I have a virtual team, which is much less expensive. Mm-hmm. And, I have all these collaborations now with nonprofits and different companies that want to work with us in the sky. So, so I decided to design basically my dream world for teens. I'm just doing it for teens because on this platform, we can only have 13 children, 13 and up right now on that platform. And I thought, okay, we're going to stick with teens because that's what we legally can do. And we're going to go deep dive into Gen Z and what their needs are. We made a coaching program, an advisory and a coaching program to support them, because when you look at the statistics, 27% of Gen Zers are looking for sort of mental health interventions or similar. A lot of anxiety out there. Also, if you look at the statistics, I say that the Gen Zers are the loneliest generation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, if this is online, right, and we can be a little bit like in the Hunger Games, like you got Professor Snow up the top and he's looking down in this world, right? And we do surveys and we do these advisories and we get a lot of intel about who the kids are. And then we can kind of social engineer opportunities. It's sort of like a positive Facebook. We're not marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is like, this one really loves, I don't know, mechanical engineering, right? And so does this one over here. Let's see if we can engineer an experience that they'll both want to go to so they can meet and start working out if they're good for each other as friends, right? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to help other teens meet each other and then find other teens who are doing stuff that they really love as well, so they can go out and do projects together. So rather than trying to make everyone be really good friends, we want them to really discover who they are as a teen, and then really intentionally design who would be a really good person for them. What kind of person they're really looking for. Because I feel like if you want to conquer loneliness, you just really need one great friend.
Yeah.
Right? Someone who's got your back, who you can do things with, who you can study with, who when you go into the world, you're like, okay, my person's there, who you can meet with regularly and, develop bonds and friendships that way. So our first session, we call them seasons. So in our fall season, we have 3-month seasons. You get a season pass if you want to join. Our advisories are going to be based on the book by Radha Agrawal called Belong. And it's really teaching them about how to belong into a community. What kind of community do you want to belong in? And just to be really intentional about who you're hanging out with and what you're doing and why you're doing that. And teaching them how to be a really good friend. Because I don't remember people teaching me that, right? And that would have been a great life skill. I see that with parents too. There's a lot of parents out there who don't necessarily have really good friends. Yeah. And now, especially now in COVID, we're away from family and a little more isolated. So we're doing that in our first session, and then we move on to soft skills. Then we're doing work habits. We're using Atomic Habits as our book for that. We have a side-by-side parent community. And then we're just filling up, a catalogue of different classes and experiences that all the different kinds of educators that we're working with want to be offering these teens. An example, Quantum Camp is one of our education providers, and they do great math and science classes, and they integrate the history of the ideas in these subjects and the human discoveries that led us up to this point. So they're not just siloed classes, they're very interesting, experiences. A little, some like around financial literacy. We've got a shaman that's joining in, and she's doing shadow work with the older teenagers. So there's a lot of different things. So a lot of fun. But if you want to do Algebra 1, you can do Algebra 1.
You want to do shamanic journeying, you can.
And exactly. So I mean, any parent can actually teach. You can have multiple parents get together to teach a course together. We can do emergent learning. You can really put in all those things designed around what the children are asking for and their interests. And then, of course, we have some collaborations with like Arizona State University, and they can do dual enrollment classes too. But, learners can pick anything from anywhere. I mean, they could do their math on Khan Academy, like at Acton, or they could, it's really up to the parents. And then we have that support network to help parents, choose the best life ever or the best pathway forward for their teens. And we also have this great thing. We have 30-minute check-ins. We have wayfinding for teens as well. And that's designed.
You're killing me. You're
we have the lily pad building, and that's all about them plotting out their little journey on lily pads. It's not going to be straight. Nothing humans do is ever in a straight line. And then they check in with their coach, their wayfinding coach, once a week. And it's basically a reflection on, okay, so what did you do to get, to work on your lily pads?
Yeah.
And then, to just keep designing that pathway, because we've also learned that them just starting something and going in a direction, taking action steps, builds their motivation over time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to help your teen develop drive really just means going in a direction, from how I observe it, and then just building that confidence and competence as they go along these little pathways, and developing that toolkit that they can apply in any direction. So they learn how to learn anything, really well.
Wow, that is amazing. I just, wow, like my mind is blown. There's so many, you're just like ringing all my bells right now. And with both workspace education and your past history with being a project-based homeschooler, and then also with what you've created now, it's just, wow, it's incredible. So I saw on the video about it that it's not necessarily to take the place of regular school, but can it take the place of regular school?
Well, absolutely. So one of the things that I have a problem with is that, people can get, a little judgy about how other homeschoolers do things, right? So
yes, they can.
I want to have an unschooler, right, side by side with someone who's doing a really traditional track, but they're in their advisory and they're talking about belonging. So it's not about their academic pathway. It's about who they are, right, and what they care about, right, and how they want to go out and fully and authentically express themselves in the world. I don't want it to be this academic competition that school is really around. So we are not a school. I mean, we don't give transcripts. However, we do have vetted educational providers that can give you a transcript. But what this is about, what we're looking at, is the whole human, right? And we really understand that this human is not a little isolated number, right? It's not an individual, but part nested in a family, right, with a particular set of values. And that family is nested in a little community and, larger and larger circles. So much more of a regenerative approach to education as opposed to a competitive traditional approach, I would say.
Right. Wow. And I have so many things I want to ask you. So
we're making good humans.
Yeah, yes. Of course, that's amazing. And serving so many people that want this and don't even know they want it, but want it. So I keep thinking, right, also being in this space of kind of innovative education and doing something different, of like where are we going? Like, what's this all going to look like? How is life and our children's years and development and futures and careers and everything going to look? And I think we can't ignore the in-person, aspect. Like, I get it. I have friends that I never see and that I talk to online and on the phone and on WhatsApp. And my kids have friends through Minecraft and synthesis and stuff like that, and that they don't ever see in person. But there's something also about that physical connection that is just really, really important. So looking at kind of, if I was talking to Chris Frank, who is the CEO of Synthesis School, and he was talking kind of about this future model where you learn your academics online, but then you have real world experiences that are kind of developing your body and your in-person social skills and things like that. Like, I don't know, can you just like jam a little bit on what you think about all that?
This is what it's been in my mind too. Like, because at the beginning you think, I got this giant space and I'm like telling everyone, yeah, you come every day and we're going to meet and it's going to be like school, right? But an actual family doesn't want to meet every day. 2 to 3 days with other people is plenty, right? We all like some time at home and get the washing done, and and kids need time, right, where they're quiet too. They don't have any distractions. right? Where they can really apply themselves to the things that they want to dig deep in, or write a story, or, you know, you don't want to be social all the time. So I think, and over time, I've seen it play out so many times, and especially now, there are things you can do online really well, right? Right, and there's things that you can do in person really well. And as far as the space is concerned, like when my daughter wanted to do, you know, when she wanted to go on to Broadway, it would be better for her to obviously not do that online, right? But to go to a place that's really specializes in that, right? And they've got everything set up and the right teachers and the connections and the network, and that's an in-person place. So I think she should be in there doing that kind of stuff. And then Algebra 1, you could pretty much do anywhere. I mean, you could, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Algebra 1 courses out there in every kind of way. Or if you don't, you know, and you could get a tutor to do it. You could do it online. You could do it in person. You know, it feels right now that it's a waste of resources to drive anywhere to go and do Algebra 1 now after having the COVID experience, right?
Right.
The tools are getting much, much better interactively in, you know, online classroom delivery, and getting so much more affordable. I mean, I was on Chegg the other day. No, was it Wiser? No, yeah. So I've been like doing a bit of research in different ways that you can do things now, because technology is increasing at such a, you know, a rate that, you know, you can have some, you know, the AI homework person who, as soon as you've got a question, the AI can jump in and help you when you get stuck. So you don't really need to have an in-person instructor anymore. And then you can find an instructor in pretty much anything, for a whole range of different prices, and some very, very reasonable, it seems to me. And that's a very efficient way to, you know, to make quite a lot of progress quickly. So yeah, I just don't believe in monocultures. I don't believe in all school.
Right.
I don't believe in all in person. I don't believe in all online, right? I believe in intentionally custom crafting a pathway based on who you are and how you learn, what makes you happy, what brings you joy in your learning. And, you know, are you having enough meaningful exchanges with humans and seeing what humans do and these sort of things, right? Are you out in the real world? You know, not all the time, but doing a couple of things that are really making you feel connected with the earth that we're living in, and you know, what humans are doing on, and having to make those decisions, getting them early, making these decisions about these pathways means that, you know, by the time they go to college, they're going to be able to make the most of, the world will actually be their oyster, right?
Yeah.
They'll have the confidence to tackle anything, and make the most of every resource at the university that will be at their fingertips if they choose to go to college. So yeah, I mean, each pathway is different for everyone, which is why we called our research and development company 100 Roads, because there's so many different ways to get to where you want to go.
I love that. I love that. Is your school open to people living outside the United States? Not your school, but is WorkspaceSKY Teens open?
Yeah, it's open for everyone, but it's really designed. Well, I mean, when we set it up, we thought coast to coast, because really we're looking at only around 200. Well, we probably could have up to 500 teens on there, but like at the beginning, because this is, you know, we're just really starting out, we're probably going to limit it to 200. So we thought that, you know, we have a much bigger market now because we're now virtual. But saying that, we did have a group from England who wants to join. So they're like, well, the timing's perfect for sort of after school, they could do their work at home and then they can jump in and then do sort of the second half of the day in the sky, because we're open 12 hours. It's a co-working space. Yeah, it's hosted a little bit like a cruise, you know, like when you wake up in the morning, you get your little email or you get your little thing under the door and it says, okay, at 9 o'clock, this is going to happen. At 10 o'clock, this is going to happen. And we have 2 times during the day where everybody meets. It's optional, but they can all meet, and we have guest speakers, career exploration. We have wellness classes, our advisories, of course. We have makering, we do clubs. yeah, just a lot of different things. And we have an operation and events team that are organizing and putting all these things on.
That's
So
fantastic.
I think it's going to be fun.
And how has it, you haven't opened yet? When do you open?
September 7th.
Oh,
Yeah, we
it's
just actually
coming
got our
up.
website up. Yeah, it's just coming up. We just opened enrollment last week. So yes.
Are you full?
No, not full yet, but we will be full. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, great.
It's $350 a season for 3 months.
That's a great price.
So we give a $200 discount if you sign up for 3 seasons. And then we're planning to do really cool in-person things during the summer.
Oh, tell me more. Where?
Well, like on the ranch, we have on our ranch here, we have like 17 horses, for example, and we have a person who runs the stables, and her husband is actually in Alaska right now doing adventure trips on horseback, and we're like, oh my gosh, we should be doing these really great things for our teenagers as well. Really interesting in-person experiences. So I'm really looking to partner with people who are doing very cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then inviting teens to participate in that. So we're not really education providers, or we could be, but we've decided that we're going to source the best stuff that we can find nationally, right? And then just offer the smorgasbord to our teenagers.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, my children are 12 and 10. So my son will be 13 in November. So I hope there's space for him. I would love to sign him up. We're way down here in El Salvador, and we, I originally started our school because I wanted the same things that you were talking about. I became disillusioned with regular school, and my children were these like bright, creative kids and wanted to build things and break things and explode things. And then school, they just started, like this, just falling asleep in school. They were so bored. So took them out, started doing project-based homeschooling. And then I was like, I need more people. So I started my school, and what you created is like, I think, my greatest fantasy that I never dared even think of, but it's so great that you did and that you made it. So we made like a mini version of what you did, and out of our Acton Academy, we have a Montessori preschool, and it's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, so it's been really, really fun. But in some ways it hasn't become as creative and community minded of a space that as I wanted it to be. I don't know if it's me or the culture or just time and energy constraints or the focus of, academic. I don't know. It hasn't gotten there yet. So, and we need a bigger space and things like that. But anyway, so just to hear you talk is like very inspiring. So thank you very much.
Well, I've heard wonderful things about your school, and I love Acton Academy. And I really do. I really feel like the program really develops agency. And when I talk to any child who's actually gone through, Acton for a number of years, I'm always super impressed. It's like talking to little adults.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, they have so much accountability, right? And they really take responsibility for their education. And I definitely don't see it nearly as much in public school children. And that they're also very kind, and they're very, because I think the Socratic piece in Acton really helps them develop empathy and understanding for each other. So it's a very special school, and I'm really glad you made that choice.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think our kids are very much themselves. We noticed we went to we always tell the story that our kids entered some digital videos into a competition at a local school, and we won. And so when they got up there and they won, they were just jumping up and down, screaming like maniacs because they were so excited, and no one had ever kind of given them the message to tamp it down, and then the other children that won, that were from like a conventional school, they were just like, very meek and very like embarrassed. And so we just saw right there, like, we made the right choice, because our kids don't feel embarrassed to be expressing themselves. And that was that's something else I really appreciate about Acton, because it like preserves the natural personality of the child.
Right. And we're so diverse as humans, right?
Aren't we? Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to do was create my child to be a conformist.
Yes.
Conformist thinking, conformist doing, right? I wanted them to do that
feeling or pretending to feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's such, we're only bringing, like, I only have two children.
Yeah, me too.
And they're so different, right? And they have such beautiful little essences that we nurtured them as, when they were little, their little personalities. And the last thing I wanted to do is to witness from the sidelines my child's personality being squashed because it wasn't this, or them feeling like, I'm not smart enough in this area, or that their interests aren't important, and those sort of things. So I did, just saying that, I did try and put my child back into a Montessori when he was 12, because he really needed kids, a middle school. And I thought, well, it'd be so much easier for me if I didn't have to build a school. If I didn't, right? It would be so much easier. If the place already
someone else
right?
built the school.
Yeah. So I put him back, and it was a beautiful little school with 19 teenagers. And, I loved the leadership. I loved the teachers. It was a beautiful space, very Montessori and perfect. But I found that he was now working for other people, not for himself. Right? It just seemed to suck his agency out of him.
And how did you solve the social problem? Like you said, it's because he needed more people at 12.
Yeah.
But so what did you do? Because I'm in the same position with my kids, and it's so hard. I don't know what to do.
Well, I think, so my problem was my daughter went to college, and then it was just me and my son at home if I was going to be homeschooling.
Mm-hmm. Oh, because your daughter's older.
Yeah, she's older. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And so he also, was playing Minecraft. So he had friends all over I don't know who he was playing Minecraft with, but it started becoming, I want to play Fortnite. I want to do this. I want, all these other games, right? And I'm like, well, dude, you have to do maths away from the friends that he was craving so much, and he was meeting them in online games to pull him off to do all the time. I just didn't want to have those battles. I didn't want to have that relationship. So I thought, well, I'll just put him into the Montessori school and see how we go with that. Before computer games would become a little bit addictive. Before we got to that point. Because I see that a lot in kids too. I have to say that, there are a lot of children, if they don't have they're so addictive and they want the social so much that it's really hard for them not to be spending too many hours in front of the screen. But I just thought that if I created Workspace, there'd be all these people walking around and all these humans, and he would have like 50 to 100 little conversations with humans. So he wouldn't get lonely, right? He'd be exposed to all this stuff that was going on. He could choose his classes, and he could literally develop that agency. And also he wouldn't be confined to his age group. He could hang out with older ones, with younger ones, with 77-year-old chess player over there or whatever, right? And he would feel like he had somewhere where he belonged and was sort of part of this community. They want to be around teenagers. So you have to find a community or do theater, or or a sports team, or somewhere where they're going to get that feeling of belonging. And they need to have, a couple of one good study buddy or friend or project partner.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So I've had you on for quite some time, and I know you just got back from traveling, so I want to let you go. But please answer our final question that I always ask is, if you could compare what your, Workspace Education and WorkspaceSKY Teens with conventional school using a metaphor, what would that metaphor be?
Metaphor. Well, I'm going metaphor. Well, I think we have children in the wild. In a sense, we're allowing them to be in their natural habitat and really fully and authentically expressing themselves rather than adapting to the zoo.
Yeah. I love it.
Right?
That's great.
That's how I feel about it. Like at the end of the childhood, they would have grown into the son or daughter that you actually gave birth to, right? And they're here because there is a way that they're going to contribute to the world.
Yes.
Right? And we want them to be confident and competent to do that, and to really know, to explore enough to know what that thing is, right? Where that intersection of what they care about, what they like to do, where their talents are, where they get joy, right? We want them to discover that, so that actually when they go out into the world and when they go to, further learning places, that, they'll have a direction, they'll be motivated, they'll know how to find resources, they will already have mentors and people to help them jump multiple lily pads on their journey. We want that for them. And I just fear that in a school environment, in the four walls and the conformist thinking, and you have to do it this way, right? They're not going to be able to explore that. And also socially, when you when you have 300 of the same age people competing, right? It's going to bring out the worst traits, right, in people. And socially, for my children, I think even survival skills might have to, and coping mechanisms have to be developed to cope with the intense social competition and pressure that they're under. So I don't think it's necessary anymore. If it was really necessary to get the learning, that's one thing. But you can go to community college, you can do dual enrollment classes in high school, you can get an associate's degree before you finish, right? And there are so many different ways to learn anything, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really important for them to understand that they don't have to be a pawn of an institution, right? And they learn that by developing their confidence and competence. That is really their agency, and they need to practice doing that and making these decisions so they're not victims of a system and they don't get stuck.
Yeah, I agree. And that they don't have to spend a lot of their time unlearning a lot of those bad habits that they develop and unsatisfying or inauthentic ways of relating to the world and other people, that later I think a lot of us spend time like having to go to therapy, like relearn how to do those things and unlearn old habits and reestablish new habits and ways of relating. And if you never learn those bad things, then you have more time to work on what brings you joy.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't like kids having to constantly be getting the approval, constantly looking for the approval of other adults, right? I want them to be challenging themselves. There's a lot of things that are not ideal about school, but for some kids it really works too. So like I just think that as a parent your children the best. Right. And you see where they thrive, right? So I think you inherently know, and you have to trust yourself as a parent, and really put yourself in the role as a child coach, like as your child's coach and advocate.
Yeah.
And as soon as they're very easy to take care of when they become very competent, right?
Yes.
When you don't have to do stuff anymore, right? But they have to develop those skills. So at the beginning, it is challenging, but it really is it does pay off, I think so.
And did your children ever sort of fantasize about going to a regular public, like my daughter watches Glee and she's like, I want to go to public school. I'm like, well, it's not exactly like that, but
we have so many anecdotes of people going back for 1 week.
Right?
They want to be with peers. That's like,
yes, it's
like, this is where the kids are. Of course they want to experience that, right? And they don't want to be the homeschooler or the odd one out, right? They have that. And I think my daughter was actually happy to be in college where she wasn't a homeschooler anymore. She was like a college person like everyone else.
Yeah.
Because, some people do have the wrong impression actually of pretty much. There's probably the wrong impression of what homeschooling is like now. Mine didn't ever go back in. My son doesn't want to touch it with a barge pole. My daughter was curious, but I think also she wanted to meet boys,
Yeah.
And that's sort of where there's a lot of boys there,
Yes.
And we had a pretty small pool as a homeschooler in our area, because a lot of teens do go back to conventional school. And I wanted to create a space where we had enough pool, because we had enough teens that other teens would want to come to. And I think that's what WorkspaceSKY is going to be. It's going to be a mecca for teens, and it's going to be a launch pad to get them out into the real world, doing the in-person stuff, but having a meeting place where they can have that consistent friend group and find people in their passions, right? And
wonderful.
Have a coach.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I've been thinking about, because my kids, because I started, most Acton owners, they start their school for their kids, but then the bulk of the students don't come until a couple of years in, when it's established. So our kids are like those pioneers in the front that don't have a lot of peers, because the bulk of the students come behind them. So I kind of now have this idea that Blake Bowles gave me of creating these in-person experiences with the different Actons, or with your kids, or at Workspace SKY Teens or whatever, that we find these fun experiences and we have them all get together and go at different times of the year, or that they can rotate around to different Actons and be together, So we tried to do we did do a virtual collab during the pandemic, which I know is continuing, but we did it with Venice Beach, California, and St. Charles, Missouri. And so they all had like a virtual group, but my kids are still like, I want in-person people, obviously. So it's a challenge, but it's worth it for sure.
Yeah. I think they're going to look back and be really, just feel very, very grateful that you've given them that experience. And they've also seen what it takes to actually create an enterprise, through you, right? Yeah. And I think that's what my children, basically witnessed me, working 100 hours a week to try actually, make something like this bold happen, right? And even like with WorkspaceSKY, I now have a team of 20. Like,
wow.
We have psychotherapists, and obviously I designed it based on Montessori philosophy and international baccalaureate and self-actualization. Like, I've got all these things, and it's all built on sacred geometry with all these things that are embedded into it. And it was the most beautiful thing to create, because Montessori said we want to give teens the world, right? And when I was designing Workspace Education, I'm thinking, how can I put the world in this building, And I thought maybe I have to be in a town, and I'll have the library, and I'd do all these. I was thinking of all these different configurations. But now in the virtual space, and I want to encourage anyone listening to build their own of what I've just done, you can completely design this thing in your head, and you can actually make it in a virtual place. You can make buildings, you can design the buildings. Like, we have this whole center called Project U, and we've got Dr. Chris Unger from Northeastern coming in to do our mentoring program. I've got the lily pad wayfinding building. I've got this epistemology building where it's find your truth, and we have a career exploration. We have all these sort of different places, and they can just walk around. We've got a beautiful river that goes through it, little picnic tables. They can sit on the lawn. It's just the most beautiful little place to design. And, I could design it based around all those things I think that will delight teens, and where I'd want to be if I was a teen, or if I just joined a university to explore the whole place. I want them to be explored. So
may I ask what platform you're using, or did you design it?
No, we're using, because like everything I do, I'm a little bit of a Walmart shopper, in the sense that I want everyone to be able to do what I've done. I mean, I realized they couldn't have bought that big building, and that's been a problem in the training that I've done, because all the founders come in, they really want to do it, but it's too much to have to do have that financial worry of the building. So I've been thinking about how could we replicate this in a really low cost format. So the most important thing is to have a community. You have to have a community really before you build. Otherwise, you're going to have like dead makerspace situation. So community is really the most important thing. And so how do you build that community, and and that's what we've been really focusing on in WorkspaceSKY, because we want them to feel they've got, they're in a community and they have their dorm and their locker and they've got all these little things that they're going to really want to feel like they belong. So rather than design a platform, I wanted to design one at the beginning. Clearly, it'd be lovely to have your own platform, because I wanted all children to be able to be on it, not just 13 plus, and we're limited by what the platform will allow. So we're using GatherTown, but we're not doing it in the way that GatherTown is creating spaces, which is much more like I don't know if you've played Among Us.
Oh,
Have you played Among Us?
Yes, yeah.
And you look down like a bird's eye view on an area. We have a more immersive.
You're inside.
View. Yeah, so you feel a little bit more like you're inside. And then we have all these naturescapes. So you can portal all around the place, but you can go into this beautiful beach, by a lake, and you can walk on the beach, and you can climb up in the mountains and deposit your little reflections about whatever you're doing in the class. And also with the classes, you don't actually have to be inside a building. You could just be on the map somewhere. And you could be walking around. Like you could say, okay, we're going to meet on the grass over here, and then we're going to walk over here. We're going to portal through here. We're going to be in the laws of the universe, and then we're going to go upstairs onto the roof at the WorkspaceSKY building, and we're going to sit there and have a Socratic discussion. And then while you're walking there, they could be in pairs talking about, answering the question, so that when they get to the space, then they can have that discussion. So it's not like they're sitting there on a Zoom call. They are walking around and having discussions,
right?
Exploring as they go. And it's just sort of a different way to deliver an online experience.
And Cath, what is your personal creativity process for coming up with this? Are you like just in the shower and you're like, I see it, and then you like sketch it? Do you have like giant whiteboards? Are you a journaler? What do you do?
Yeah. Giant pieces of paper, right? And then, so for me, like I have like people who really inspired me, like obviously Montessori, we talked about that. John Seely Brown, he talks about pragmatic imagination, and how that we need to keep this as a superpower for our kids. They come in, if you're a Montessorian, you'd know that, in elementary that your imagination is a superpower. And somehow in our the conformity of school, we lose that belief in ourselves about our imagination, right? We dumb that down to the point where we can't even imagine our futures. And if we're going to be creating the world we want to live in, we need them to be standing on the precipice of the future and looking out into the world and saying, okay, this doesn't exist and this needs to exist, and how do I do it, right? So we want, that's what we want to be doing. I said that because I really like John Seely Brown. He also talks about communities of practice and how we need to be getting kids finding, like if they're passionate about woodwork, they need to find the local woodworking group and get into the periphery of that and see how they can join that and watch humans doing that work to really see if that's what they want to be doing, and finding that the building their social capital so they can actually really participate and discover if that's their thing or not. And if it's not, then they try something else, right? But how do we bridge that? How do we get them to those places? Because they can think they like something, but until they actually do it, they might not know. So we want to get them out doing projects and experiencing these kinds of things. I also love Christopher Alexander, who's an architect, and he talks about how to create places that enhance human experience. So we're trying to create a place that's really alive, that when you're in it, you are actually creating memories, and we want them to have a lot of positive memories and experiences by being in the place. We want them to have a lot of joy. And we don't think people are getting a lot of joy from, the average Zoom call class, that they're getting. And they're getting turned off being in the online space. But for me, I feel like no one's really researching and seeing what's possible between a Zoom call and the in-person experiences. So what I'm doing in 100 Roads is really looking at infrastructure of how we can make enhanced human experiences, that deliver education in a really interesting way that keeps them stimulated and wanting them coming back for more. So a lot of novelty, surprise, delight, a lot of conversations.
I love that you're saying that about anchoring memories and experiences in a physical space. It's kind of like when you're reading a book, like when we read physical books, I can remember things by like where they are, like how deep in the book and what side of what page, and it helps me anchor my learning. Whereas on a Kindle, I have less retention. Maybe children don't feel that way, but I do because I grew up with physical books. And so, but I think there's something to that. And I can remember conversations based on where I was, whereas in a Zoom call, I don't have those anchors. So I love that you're doing that. That's amazing. How are you like so prolific all the time? I mean, you just went to a conference, you just moved out to Montana. Yeah. It sounds like you just never sleep and you're just constantly learning and reading and creating. Yeah. But do you also have kind of a wintering or like a downtime where you let those ideas, that you rest in order to create?
Yeah. I know it's hard to rest when you're about to launch something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
My husband's like, oh my God. I just got you back and now you're like launching this other thing. And I'm like, well, I have to because the world needs that right now, right? And we have to see if this works. So everyone's running away from online learning, but I think we should this is where it's going because it's a lot cheaper and you can disrupt it. I mean, this is where the disruption is going to happen. It's not going to happen because it's so expensive. I mean, having done Workspace, I saw the shortfalls of how to operate like that. And now, I mean, now I have a global talent pool to help do this. And I can do it affordably. And, I'm sleeping now and I have people around the world who are working while I'm sleeping, which is like, it's like having a superpower as a creator. It is so great to have, to having a team who can actually make your idea manifest for you. But also and this has been a nice challenge for me, is I'm into regenerative education, which is developing people. And I'm like, okay, I've got this young staff who've never done this before. We're using new technology. I've completely redesigned Workspace Education and upgraded it from what it was when we were on the ground, right? So I'm teaching all of these tools and techniques to this new staff who didn't have any experience with them. And I am tooling them so they could create anything. Like they are right now creating WorkspaceSKY Teens, but after this, they could be deployed to make another one for, like in Australia, or they could, this is just how to learn something really well, right? And how to operate as a team, all the things we want our teens to get, how to be part of an agile, adaptive team, right? And to be the most resourceful you can, how to push your boundaries and be creative and find creative solutions, all these things. We want this for our teens too. And the staff is learning how to do it as we do this. And they're going to be, they're going to be in the front lines with our teens as well. And we want to be, helping the teens upskill. So we're all growing and learning and evolving through this process, this constant recreation of ourselves in these new roles. And I just think it's very exciting that that we're actually alive at this time where, we have so much at our disposal. We just don't need to be limited by the conventional ways that we've done things in the past anymore. So I want to be providing what these teens are going to need to go out in the workforce. I've just been to this EdTech conference, right, with the 200 most innovative EdTech companies. And, we're founders. We sit there and we talk about, the kinds of staff that we need in the future and what's helping, what isn't, and all these things. And I'm just thinking, we need a different way of doing education. So we're developing these kinds of people, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what Workspace Teens is all about. And I think it's going to be, we're early days, of course. I mean, this is still an idea, like floating around, like in February, right? So it's been a lot to put together between February and now. But I think we work on the principle, and we do this with teens as well, is that we just make a little improvement every day, all of us in our company.
1% every day. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's all of us doing that,
That's
everybody's
amazing.
working towards that. And I think that with teens too, I mean, if they're constantly, upskilling every day, improving their skills, but also their self-awareness, and then working on their next lily pad so they're going in a direction, there is no way that they can't be moving forward in the right direction. They're going to make progress.
Definitely. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all that amazingness with us. It is really exciting and slightly overwhelming. And you're really inspiring.
Well, I know I've gone over time. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. I felt bad like keeping you on for a long time, but so thank you so much for the abundance of all your ideas and everything. I really have seen things in a whole nother way from talking to you. And I love that you said, because we feel like we have to choose between real world or online, and that online can just never be as high fidelity as like the real world. But I see how you're trying to bring them closer, and I never thought about it like that. So thank you. That's really given me something to think about. And
well, it's such a pleasure to finally get to meet you.
Likewise. And I'm going to be on When School's Not Working at the end of August too. So
awesome.
Yeah, so we're all kind of, and I've interviewed Matt on here, and also Michael Strong. So we're all like in the same fan club.
Yeah, and I have Vritti. Do you know Vritti Saraf yet?
I do not.
She started K20 Educators, which is this really awesome universe for educators to get together to share all the cool stuff that they're doing. She did a conference on Twitter Space. She did the first educational conference on Twitter Space.
Cool.
And she had like 257,000 views. Like it was crazy. Yeah, she's got amazing. I don't know, 58,000 followers on Clubhouse, and I just think I've been in her network. She's got a mighty network, and she's basically right now putting together a platform for these educators. But I was at the conference with her, and she's also making a metaverse. She's making the metaverse, like the Eduverse.
Wow.
She's making a gather town for educators, and I'm, obviously I have a gather town for our teens, but we may get together and build the Eduverse platform.
I like it.
Because it's just because why not, right? I think the world needs that.
Definitely.
Our kids deserve that. Yeah.
Definitely. Wow, that's really cool.
Maybe have her on too. She'd be a good person to have on.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and she's one of the up and coming ed tech companies, and I think she's going to do great work in the future. There's so much good stuff going on.
Definitely. Yes. So cool. I spoke to Victoria Ransom a couple of weeks ago too, from Prisma, and she was also another brilliant woman, just doing amazing things. And I learned so much from her. So
good.
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
Yeah,
well, thank you. It's been so wonderful to have you. Thank you for everything. And I'm sure our audience feels very inspired and encouraged about the future and has lots of great ideas. And tell us the URL of WorkspaceSKY Teens so they can go check it out.
Yeah. So it's www.workspaceteens.org.
Okay, fantastic.
And if they want to make one, if they want to make their own, if they get inspired, there'd be nothing I would love for other people to make these things, right? Because you're creating a space that's going to be more and more physical. It's very inexpensive. It's free if you have under 25 kids. And I do workshops every month, free workshops, 3-hour workshops to help you design your space from scratch. So you might have some kids, you might want to do one in El Salvador, you can just come to a workshop and, I'll show you how I did WorkspaceSKY, and then you can get going on your vision.
Definitely. Oh, how do I sign up for that on WorkspaceSKY Teens?
Yeah, it's actually on WorkspaceSKY Teens. It's like, do you want to make one of these?
Okay, good. I'll go.
Just put your name there, and then you can just register. It's on. I think we start on the Zoom call and then we go into the Miro. I don't know if you've used Miro boards before, but I find them a fantastic tool. It's like a whiteboard with Post-it notes and arrows and all sorts of things. So you can actually basically design out what you want to create. And once you've designed it, then, after, I'm finding that, a lot of these founders, they have all these ideas, but, I use that session to really narrow it down, and they basically design it with Post-it notes and arrows, and I want this and I want this. And then they've got this blueprint for building it, and then they can do their little first version of what they want to do, and then they can always elaborate, and it'll get the wheels turning about, the big picture of what they want to do. So it's kind of a fun thing, and you leave with like, okay, I know what I want to do. And I think that's hard because
and then the process of building it in GatherTown, like, do you need special technical skills to do that? Do you need a developer, or is it kind of
really
like Minecraft? Like you build it yourself?
No. This is why I picked GatherTown. It's the easiest platform to build on, because it's got you need to make a background, and it could be a photograph, right? Just a photo, or you just need some kind of landscape in the back, because the little characters, they walk around the landscape. And then if you want to put a building in, you just plop on a building, and then you put a little door, right? And then your little character can go into the building, and once they're in the building, at the door, they portal inside it. And so then you make an interior. So now they're in somewhere, right? And then when they're in an interior, you make you put little tables and chairs. All the furniture's already done for you. And you can make a Socratic circle. You could make an Acton Academy classroom. You could make the school of your dreams. You can do whatever you want. You can make breakout rooms from that, right? And then you can make a playground. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to add this to this, and I'm going to add this. And all of a sudden, you've got a world, and your teens can actually design and build it. And you can just sort of facilitate it as well. So they can create their own place where all the other Acton Academies can meet you. That's where you could do your virtual gatherings. And just an idea.
You're blowing my mind. This is great. I'm going to do it.
You should.
I know. It's so cool.
Let's create the metaverse that we want to see out there, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do it for Action. That's so cool. You just gave me the best idea.
Yeah, let's get the kids doing it.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. That way they'll have enough teenagers so they're not lonely, and they'll find enough people in their passions and those sort of things. Yeah. Definitely. And they're already doing it in Minecraft. This will be so easy for this generation. They're digital natives. They do it just with a,
like this. Yeah.
Snap of the finger.
Definitely. They do.
Yeah.
You're so great. I've enjoyed speaking with you. I hope that our paths cross in real life. Maybe my kids will come out and ride your horses one day soon.
Thanks for listening to the New Schools podcast. Tell a friend. Previous episodes and show notes, including any books or websites our guests recommend, can be found at thenewschools.com. If you're a parent who is looking for a new school for your family, send us a message. We would love to help. We can answer questions, share the resources we have, and help you get in touch with people in your area who are on the same path, determined to provide their kids with the best education. It's wildly important work. Thank you for doing it, and we'll see you next time.